Go? Yeah. Yes, so this application seeks planning permission and listed building consent for works of the Cambridge Union Society on Roundchurch Street in Cambridge. The site is outlined in red in the attached location plan. So this is the historic core conservation area appraisal from 2006. So the building, if I can get the mouse cursor, is outlined in this blue here. It's the grade 2 listed building. The site also includes number 3 to 5 Roundchurch Street, which is a row of terraced cottages here. The Roundchurch church is located a little to the west here. The Park Street multi-storey car park is here. Listed building is opposite, and buildings of local interest further along the terrace opposite as well. So this is a photo looking at the back of 3 to 5 Roundchurch Street here, with the Union Society in the foreground on the left-hand side of the picture. Looking further north from the multi-storey car park area, this is the corner of 3 to 5 Roundchurch Street, and then it's looking back down Park Street. These are the listed buildings opposite, this row in here, finishing approximately where these trees are here, with them being buildings of local interest further up. So looking down Roundchurch Street, one-way system, again 3 to 5 Roundchurch Street on the left, the 1930s facade that was added to the listed building here, and the multi-storey car park on the right-hand side of the picture. And again, looking from central Roundchurch Street, 1930s squash court extension is here, the multi-storey car park on the left there. And looking further back from the Bridge Street, Roundchurch Street junction, you can see the Roundchurch in the foreground picture here, and then the 1930s extension there, the original listed building behind it. This is the internal courtyard view, just showing the main entrance, which is through these doors onto the building. So in terms of the main works happening really, so it's the extension coming out from the demolition of 3 to 5 Roundchurch Street in here. Got more detailed plans to follow. So basement floor plan, the footlights venue, it's access from Roundchurch Street currently from there. There's entrance. There'll be works to the internals of this, and the new toilets and other facilities. In the new area proposed, there would be a bin store back here with a lift going up to the ground floor, services for the restaurants, cycle parking in here, and access down to the lift for the cycle park. Ground floor, so there'll be works to the bar restaurant area that currently exists. There will be the ground floor restaurant proposed here, and there will be opening up of this current central element, making a new entrance effectively onto Roundchurch Street. Okay, first floor view, the upper floors will be student accommodation, with the main communal spaces in this location, and the other ones are rooms. And the upper floors follow similar suit with a roof terrace in between here, the Union Society. And again, fairly similar. And then in the roof space, obviously will be a bit more constrained in terms of floor layout, but it would ultimately be the same layout. And then on the roof, there will be solar photovoltaic panels on the roof in this sort of flat roofed area, either side of the two pitches. So the elevation from Roundchurch Street, so following the demolition of 3 to 5 Roundchurch Street in here, there'll be a new student accommodation extension with a restaurant on the ground floor. There'll be a linking building in the middle designed to open up the central element of the building, and there'll be the reinstatement of the former waterhouse facade to something near its original view on the demolition of the 1930s itself. In the east elevation, I have got colour photos to follow, so don't worry, but there's 2 pictures here, it's double gable, so it's looking from Park Street, again restaurant down here, and this would be the glazed linking building would be in the middle here, oriel windows on the side there. So perspective view, this would be the corner of where 3 to 5 Roundchurch Street currently is, with mainly brickwork and some stone going across to create a level eaves line. And looking from the Roundchurch Street, Bridge Street junction, you'll see the rendered 1930 extension will be going, replaced with a reinstatement of the waterhouse facade. Looking internally, be more paving in the central landscape area, designed to get more foyer. and there will be dormers up at the roof level that used to exist before being bombed during World War II and lost, so they will be reinstated as well. So the main points of contention really, so the reinstatement of the Waterhouse facade, so you can see currently the roof is hipped here. The Victorian Society suggested that any sort of reinstatement should follow that form. You can see the 1930 extension here. This idea has been explored, but it does limit the roof space quite significantly. And ultimately, the new design, as you can see here, in my view, creates quite a good break between the new building proposed for the Trinity accommodation, along with the linking element, and it sort of creates that delineation between the two aspects. The removal of this existing staircase, which you can see in the front here, the first floor, looking up where it leads, the first floor, bottom left corner, it's been one of the points raised by consultees, but there'll be a new entrance coming in off Roundchurch Street, designed to open this up and create, increase accessibility by providing a lift that can get to that floor where it's currently very difficult to do so. So there'll be multiple entrances, for example, down to the Footlights entertainment venue, up to Union Society, and then down to the basement by lift as well. So just comparing, the original plans in the top was what we came in for originally. Officers raised concerns regarding the additional height it was compared to the Waterhouse building. And the bottom picture is what has been amended, so it's been lowered. And you also see the dual gable, which you'll see in the next slide, has been removed as well. The number of dormers has been decreased from 5 to 3, and the window fenestration has been altered as well. So looking at Park Street elevation, the double gable, if you would, on each one has been removed and replaced with a simpler straight 2 pitches with oriel windows and long, narrow windows to create a difference really. And just showing, it is visible from quite a long view from Castle Mound up in Castle, just to point it out in that red box there, just if any of you are curious how it looks from long views, but this is the only real key view from outside of the site, if you would, that you can see it from. Yeah, so the officer recommendation is one of approval for both listed building and full planning commission. I have circulated sheets round. The agent has queried about a number of the wording of the conditions. I'm not suggesting that you agree to the wording today. I'm just asking if delegated approval can be given to for the potential rewording of some of these conditions for officers to arrange following committee, if that's okay. But the officer recommendation is one of approval for the reasons set out in the report.
We'll have to remember that we are being asked to give authorisation for the amendment of those conditions at the point at which we vote on this application. We now come to our 3 speakers then. Now, have you agreed an order and you've allocated your time so that no one is squeezed out? Good. Then will you begin? Are you Adam Halford?
I am, Chair.
Please proceed.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to address the committee. I am Adam Halford of Bidwells, Planning Advisor to the joint applicants, the Cambridge Union Society and Trinity College. At their essence, these applications seek to secure the future of the Cambridge Union Debating Society. Despite best endeavours, they have consistently been unable to raise sufficient funds to support their buildings, and now, as many councillors will have seen, these are in an advanced state of disrepair. The partnership with Trinity College represents the culmination of many years of work by the trustees to find a solution that would allow them to refurbish the most important buildings, replace past harms, and make them fit for the present and future of the society, including providing the means to become financially self-sufficient. The proposals before you have been the subject of extensive engagement with officers since first pre-application discussions back in 2012, again in 2013 and 2015, leading to the application submission in April this year. We have continued to work closely and positively with officers, amending the scheme in order to find the important planning balance. As it stands before you, and as supported by the conclusions of your officers, we consider that the project overwhelmingly represents this positive balance through its substantial benefits. First, and of foremost importance, securing the immediate future of the 200-year-old debating society. Refurbishing and reinstating lost features to the buildings, as well as removing the poorly conceived and poorly built 1930s interventions. Providing for the first time both a public face for the society and inclusive access to the buildings for those living with disabilities. Improvements to the public realm and creating vibrancy through the new restaurant, the expanded Society Cafe and the basement venue, former home of the Cambridge Footlights. Repairing much of the harm caused by the 1970s Park Street car park intervention, providing modern, high-quality postgraduate student accommodation, and releasing former converted student properties elsewhere in the city back for private housing. I respectfully request that the committee back the hard work and noble endeavours of the applicants and the positive work of your officers by supporting the recommendation to consent this vital project. I now invite Dr. Rob Pullen, Junior Bursar of Trinity College, and Miss Asia Lambert, President of the Union Society, to explain a little more of what this exciting project means to them.
Over to you, Rob.
Thank you. Members of the committee, I am Rod Pullen. I am the Junior Bursar of Trinity College. Trinity will not benefit financially from this project in either the short or long term. The benefit to the college will be in being able to provide the best possible purpose-built accommodation close to the college for our graduate students. Our involvement will benefit the Union Society as our purchase of a lease from them helps fund their renovation of a historic building and helps their existence as a historic debating society and long-standing feature of the city. We believe the joint project will also benefit the city itself in releasing single properties back into the housing market and helping to lift a rather desolate area in the city where in due course the council will wish to develop its own car park. Trinity understands the heritage of the city centre. The college spends some £10 million a year, none of it from public funds, to maintain the core listed buildings of the college itself and to ensure that they remain fit for purpose. But historic city buildings, not just of Trinity, have evolved over centuries and must continue to evolve to meet the changing needs and expectations if much of the city centre is not to become a sterile museum. There is a balance to be struck between preserving the past and meeting the needs of the future. We welcome the conclusion of the Council's own officers that, as now before you, these two applications get that balance right. We hope the committee will support that conclusion and approve them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Asia Lambert.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Asia Lambert. I'm the current president of the Cambridge Union Society. As you've heard, we are the oldest continuously running debating society in the world. We've been defending free debate since 1815. Currently in Cambridge, we have in residence around 5,000 members who both come from the University of Cambridge and indeed Anglia Ruskin. And beyond that, we have over 70,000 members on our database who are currently residing all around the world. And so the reach and the impact of the society is much wider than on those who are currently living and working and studying here. We are a registered charity, but we are actually run by current university students. Saying that, however, we are completely independent from the University of Cambridge and we don't receive any formal funding from them. Over our 200-year history, we have been very fortunate to host some extraordinary speakers, including Churchill, Roosevelt, the current Dalai Lama, and the Society has produced many exceptionally successful politicians and professionals themselves. This application that you have before you really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us as a society to address the existing problems that we have with our home at 9A Bridge Street and to place the society on a firm financial footing for the future. We're very proud to have Reverend Jesse Jackson supporting our application, and I do hope today that the Council will choose to support the Union by granting us the permission on our planning application together with Trinity. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank all three of you. Please stay at the table while we have our discussion.
Thank you, Chair. In days gone by, I wasn't allowed into the Union Society, but that's a longer story than I care to mention. But having had a tour earlier this year around the site, it was clear that it is very dated. It is in need of care and attention, and clearly in need of an awful lot of investment and repair work to boot. I was struck by the balance of uses currently in the building, and clearly there is an intention to add student accommodation to one of those uses, which clearly has a high relevance within this part of the city and will assist in the overall balance of the scheme. In terms of what we were shown then, clearly there have been several amendments to the proposal in view of comments from both our own officers and others. People from different societies and other contributions have been made, and I think what's come out of the discussions and the amendments is a fine design. I think it will actually give this part of the city a bit of a lift, and hopefully if we get a decent design on the Park Street car park development in the future, again that will help to uplift this end of the city. Clearly the frontage and the view from the street at the moment is pretty poor. This will, I think, have a huge, significant uplift in the character of that street, and I think the way they've treated the fenestrations and the building design is to be welcomed, and I fully support the application.
Councillor Tunnicliffe.
Thank you, Chair. This is in the historic core, so I think we have to look extremely carefully and set the bar quite high. I'm very much in sympathy with the aims of this application. I'm also impressed by the quality of design and the attractive brickwork, but I do have some considerations. I think the scale and massing, despite the fact that the ridge height has been lowered from the first version, it still dominates, it's still higher than the original Waterhouse building. This scale and massing, to my mind, is a problem because of the slope of the land. When you come down around Church Street to Park Street and Lower Park Street, there is a noticeable slope down, which means that any building on that corner is going to appear bigger than perhaps it would be in another setting. And I regret the fact that the gable ends, which were on the earlier version, have been lost, because they happily matched the other side of the building. When you're looking at it from Park Street,
Take both sides. No.
is that right? Somewhat obscure. But anyway, the buildings on the left, when you have your back to Park Street, buildings on the left are stepped down, and the original version had recognised that and stepped down with the two gables, and I think that was a far more successful solution, added to my point about the slope of the land away towards Lower Park Street, which is going to create a very dominant feeling when you come up, as hundreds and many more than hundreds of people cycling, walking across Jesus Green, up Lower Park Street to around Church Street and on. So this corner is a crucial one in visual terms. So I think I would want to ask for the end of this building to be reconsidered, and possibly in the context of a lower ridge height, to have it no higher than the original Waterhouse building. Another point that I just wish to mention is, while I'm again in sympathy with the idea of having a a glass break between the two buildings, between the old and the new. I am concerned about that being a major entrance for two reasons. Round Church Street is extremely narrow, it is also extremely busy. How many double-decker buses go down Round Church Street constantly? And the pavement is really very narrow indeed. So if you're opening a major entrance to this set of buildings, is that an appropriate place given what goes on right on its doorstep? So I think that should be reconsidered too, because I think the impact is going to be quite serious. So while I'm in sympathy with a lot of what is being proposed, I feel that there is room for further consideration and further improvement. Thank you.
Councillor Netzing.
Thank you. First of all, I'm very grateful for the length of comments and the extent to which the officers have consulted with the urban design team. I think that the comments of the urban design team on the original scheme were extremely helpful, and I'm very grateful to them for the work that they've done on this. I am slightly concerned that while we don't have, what we have back from them now is a considerably less, their comments on the revised scheme are less lengthy. We just got we haven't got the same level of confirmation. We just got a sort of rather brief thing to say that they feel that the scale and massing issues have been substantially addressed. So I wondered whether the officer could confirm that they are, whether or not they are now happy with the scheme. My reading of it is that they are now kind of relatively balanced about it, and that it's a matter of judgment. That on the previous scheme that they did not feel, they felt quite clearly that the damage being done in terms of removal of the terrace and the potential impact of the higher roof on the existing building was too great, but that with the current scheme they're willing to leave it to our judgment. Could you clarify whether I've read that correctly?
I'm going to ask Christian Brady, who is our conservation officer, if he would add a comment at this stage.
Thank you, Chair. Addressing perhaps both councillors' points, beginning with Councillor Tankler. His points related to the scale and massing of the new accommodation building, and particularly to the treatment of the end onto Park Street, and the change from the original elevations which showed stepped gables to the pair of full height gables which the current drawings show. Both the Design and Conservation Panel and ourselves as officers were critical of the original scheme for the gables, and it doesn't show terribly well on the flat elevational drawings, but the projection of the stepped gables, the lower elements, was very minimal in fact, and slight in effect. I think the main issue was with the amount of glazing and the dominance that seemed to impose on the elevation. The revised treatment we felt was less aggressive, and that the stepped effect wasn't a loss in fact because of its shallowness in the previous version. The glass break between the two buildings' elevations on Round Church Street has been also subject of comments from the Design and Conservation Panel, as you'll see in the agenda report, and subject of much deliberation between ourselves and the architect. It's a difficult part of the scheme, and I think the panel wants to see it more part of the new building, part of the solid building, rather than a glass break between the buildings. I hesitate to say more about that. It introduces a third element in the street scene, and people will have their own views on it. Turning to Councillor Netzinger's comments, yeah, my treatment of the amended plans was indeed, as she pointed out, shorter than the original set of comments on the scheme, because the main change had been to the height of the new building and to the elevation onto Park Street, which were both key elements that had been drawn out of the comments on the initial proposals as being the most problematic and those which made the scheme unacceptable primarily. So taking into account the revised scheme, the lower ridge height and the altered treatment onto Park Street, those primary issues about scale and dominance had been addressed by the amendments. That still leaves a lot to take into account, and as a conservation officer, I'm never going to be over the moon about the removal of early to mid 19th century buildings in the centre of Cambridge. But one has to balance that against the overall impact of the proposals on the various heritage assets. We've talked about the listed buildings, the listed terrace on Park Street, and there is a benefit compared to the original scheme in the revised version of the gables, which will face those terraced houses. There will undoubtedly be improvements to what we can loosely term the public realm in the area, both in terms of the rear service yard and removing the rather unsightly 1930s elements from the buildings. And I think in conservation terms there has to be an assessment of the relative significance of the buildings concerned. So it's certainly the case that the 3 to 5 Ranchurch Street buildings are of less heritage significance than the listed Cambridge Union Society buildings, which are a very unusual heritage asset and one that's clearly in need of improvement. So there has to be some balance in terms of the relative significance of those heritage assets, as I say. And the plan has taken into account other public benefits, which include the release of some units onto some housing units back onto the market. So there has to be an assessment of, I think, two main things. One, the replacement building and the overall view that the committee might take on its success, but also in the round, the relative merits of the public benefits contained within the proposals.
Thank you so much. Councillor Pippas?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we are very privileged to have the student union here, and so many people have gone through it for the last 200 years. A very simple question: if we have the building on the right-hand side, why can't we make it look, building a new on the left-hand side? Is there a reason why it looks so different? Well, can we use some of the features from the right-hand side, which is beautiful, to incorporate them to the left-hand side? That's the question I have.
Yes, Martin Smart.
Thank you, Chair. So, Union is clearly an asset to the city, and anything to preserve its existence is a good thing. This area, in terms of the preservation of the historic core, it seems to me it's around the church itself. And I can't see that that's particularly damaged by this development. I find the elevations of Park Street delightful. I think the architects have done a fantastic job with the symmetrical, well, nearly symmetrical facade there. All in all, it seems to me that the greater good is served. The loss of 3 to 5 around Church Street is unfortunate, but as I say, the greater good is served. The only one small point I would make is that the pinch point on the corner of Round Church Street and Park Street is 1.4 metres and would be better if it was a little bit wider, which might be achieved by an adjustment to this development or possibly an adjustment in the public highway.
Thank you. If I may make a few comments myself. First of all, I have to remind members, I'm sure they're well aware of this, that we're not in a position to redesign the building. It's not our role. Our role is to examine the proposal as it stands and to pass judgment on whether we think it's acceptable. Also, I think it's fair to remind you that, as with many applications, you may have reservations about some details, but you make a balanced judgment, and you have to give weight to a number of considerations, and have to accept, perhaps, that you may have to accept certain features of a scheme which are not entirely to your liking, but nevertheless, on balance, you feel you make the decision as you see fit. I'm wholeheartedly in support of this application. I think the state of the Waterhouse building, particularly along Round Church Street, is a disgrace. I look forward to the restoration of that building in line with the Waterhouse original. I'm pleased that we are going to restore what the Luftwaffe, in their attempt to destroy free speech, managed to do by the destruction of the dormers above the roof of the courtyard, that they are to be restored and the courtyard is to be made into an agreeable public space. I'd like to remind you also that 3 to 5 Round Church Street is not a listed building. It is a building of considerable merit, but it is not listed and therefore doesn't enjoy as much protection as it would were it listed. I also think it's worth remembering that one of the attractive features of Cambridge is the way in which pretty tall buildings live quite happily alongside smaller buildings. If you look at King's Parade, for example, whoever would argue that King's College Chapel dominates the small cottages on the other side of the road, which have been converted into retail units and so on. But that sort of juxtaposition is very much a feature of the Cambridge scene, and I don't think that we should regard this application as unacceptable on the grounds that we haven't sufficiently tapered the end gable to make it acceptable to Park Street. I simply don't feel that's a valid objection. Finally, I'd like to say that I think one of the great merits of this scheme is that it would extend the animated quarter of the historic core quite considerably. One of the problems about Cambridge's historic core is that it is densely overcrowded, particularly in the summer months, and anything that we can do to extend the area of the city which is commonly visited by tourists and so on in the city is I think, an advantage. And I do feel that with a restaurant and attractive animated rooms, and perhaps something that we ourselves as a city council will do with the Park Street car park, where we have retail in mind for the ground floor and so on, this might very appreciably extend the animated area of the historic core and thereby partly at least relieve some of the pressures on it. So for all of these reasons, and for the reasons that have been given by our conservation officer and our own officer, I would urge members to support this application. Having said that, I think we'll now go to the vote. Those in favour of the officer recommendation to approve, please indicate. Unanimous. We now go to the listed building application. And Michael, would you like to say in what sense this needs separate consideration?
Through you, Chair. The main difference is that it's effectively the same proposal. 3 to 5 Roundchurch Street Road, technically not included in that because it's not a listed building, but ultimately it's the same principle, the same arguments that we're looking at. But I don't think there's anything substantially different in terms of how we look at this application compared to the full planning commission.
Well, because of the alterations which are envisaged to the Waterhouse building, we have this separate application, but it's pretty well a formality. I'm going to take a vote immediately on this. Those in favour of the listed building application, please indicate their approval. And it's unanimous. Thank you so much for your attendance, and thank you so much to our visitors.